Hello and welcome to the Radio Times podcast, your essential guide to everything worth knowing and probably some stuff that's not in the world of British television and beyond. My name's Tim Glanfield, editor of RadioTimes.com, and I'll be your guide through another veritable smorgasbord of insight, intrigue and analysis, courtesy of the team behind Britain's favourite TV website and magazine. This week we'll be discussing what the fans are making of all new Doctor Who ahead of the much anticipated Christmas Day regeneration, what's been happening down under with Ant Dec and another gang of intrepid celebrities on I'm A Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, and with Blue Planet 2 on the cover of this week's Radio Times magazine, we'll be asking just what makes these BBC landmark natural history documentaries such popular television. Now, unless you've recently fallen through a gap in the space-time continuum to a dimension where there's no website, social media, or, in fact, other people that talk out loud, you'll already know that the 13th Doctor is not only going to arrive on our screens this Christmas, but they'll be played by Jodie Whittaker. Jodie was unveiled to the world as the new star of BBC's long-running Sci-Fi show in mid-July, with a short video depicting her walking through some sort of enchanted forest in an overcoat and wearing a hoodie. However, since that mysterious entrance, we've begun to gain clues about Jodie's 13th Doctor. The fans have begun to get a sense of what new Who might look and feel like under showrunner Chris Chibnall. The Doctor will, we can confirm, wear deep blue trousers and socks, light brown braces and a black shirt with yellow, green and red stripes, topped off with an overcoat. The TARDIS will be slightly different colour. The Doctor will have 3 new companions. Oh, and yes, the Doctor will, of course, be played by a woman for the first time. I'm joined by Sarah and Paul, who are going to talk us through some of those changes and what people are saying about them. So, Sarah, first of all, what are the fans making of these quite drastic changes to Doctor Who that are coming?
Well, I think overwhelmingly the majority have been quite positive. When Jodie was first announced, people were saying either they loved the idea or they'd hold judgment until they saw her actually play the Doctor for the first time. Since her companions have been revealed, the costumes have been revealed, the TARDIS has been revealed, everything's had a really positive reception. I don't think it's fair to say that there's been no backlash, though. I think we have seen some negative opinion on it as well, as there is always going to be. That split, I think, between people who are generally just a little bit nervous because they've only known one kind of Doctor Who, they've only known a male Doctor, so they're a little bit unsure about the changes, and that's fine. But then there are a vocal kind of minority who are just being quite frankly difficult about the whole thing. They're saying the show is over, this means there'll never be Doctor Who again, and once Jodie appears, they'll just cancel it, and I don't think that's quite fair. But thankfully, I think they're mostly in the minority.
And Paul, what have you noticed from the fans in this kind of interim period that we're in?
I think Sarah's right that there is that small minority of people who, I don't know, I just wouldn't always going to be difficult about it, are never going to accept this. Although maybe they'll accept it once they see it. Change is difficult for some people. But yes, I think generally people are really positive. That's what I've kind of seen. That's the vibe I've got from social media and just talking to people. Certainly, I'm very positive about it, very excited. I found myself when I'm writing about Doctor Who on the site, writing, about Jodie Whittaker and writing that it's going to be a woman, actually just getting quite a thrill doing that. And thinking about the sort of young female fans who'll be watching the show and kind of seeing her as a role model for them, which they've never seen in that context before. And I just think it's a great thing and really exciting.
And it's not just the Doctor who's changing, the kind of dynamics around the Doctor are going to change as well. So we're going to have almost a family-style affair of 3 new companions, one of whom, Bradley Walsh, obviously famous to many as the host of the excellent game show The Chase, but also, of course, worked with Chris Chibnall on Law and Order, as Jodie Whittaker did, as worked before on Broadchurch. So what are people saying about the companions? What are people making of this new dynamic?
Well, we asked quite early on what people wanted to see in Series 11. And we polled more than 3,500 people, and 63% of them at the time said they'd really like to see more than one companion. And it seems like they've definitely got their wish, because we've got Bradley, as you mentioned. We've also got Tosin Cole, who people might know from Hollyoaks, and who, if you look really closely, you will have spotted in Star Wars. And Mandip Gill, also from Hollyoaks. She had quite a big role for a while. Her character was quite dramatically killed off by a murderer in Hollyoaks as well. Yeah, the gloved hand killer, a very famous character. So she's popped up at the moment as well. If you're watching Love, Lies and Records, the K melodrama on BBC, you can see Tosin in that. So we know... Mandip, I should say, not Tosin. But we know that they will be kind of the core TARDIS team. But then for fans, there's also Sharon D. Clark, who's going to be popping in and out,
yes,
isn't
formerly of the Holby City parish, I believe, who did she play? She played a character called Lola Griffin, I think. And we don't really know what part she's going to play yet.
No.
But it's going to be a recurring character. So I feel like maybe she could be, without wanting to typecast, maybe she could be a somewhat earthbound kind of mother figure, perhaps. I get the impression that when they talk about the TARDIS team, it's Jodie, Bradley, Tosin and Mandip, and maybe Sharon plays a slightly different role, but it'd be interesting to find out.
The only thing we really know about them is that Bradley's character is called Graham, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, I think we know the names of the others as well.
Do we?
I think we don't know Sharon's name, but Tosin playing a character called Ryan,
yes,
and Mandip is playing one called Yasmin, I think. But yeah, it has been remarked upon that in the world of Doctor Who, this universe with all these different amazing characters with these fantastical names and so on, that the new companion being called Graham is sort of a very, but I think that's quite fun. It sort of brings it back down to earth, which is what a companion should do to a certain extent. So,
well, I think with all of the changes going on, it's quite nice to have some sort of continuity and some traditional stuff going on. There's some traditional clues in the outfit. Is that right? In what Jodie Whittaker's wearing?
There's a few nods, I think, back to former Doctors. And of course, the braces. People will think of Matt Smith, and even before his time, there were Doctors with braces. They're saying that the stripes in her topper also hints back to those multicoloured scarves and the famous colours.
I think when you put them together, they do match up almost exactly to those colours. So, yeah.
So there's a real kind of nod to the heritage. I suppose, and with her big coat, which of course nobody knows, they're saying it's actually blue or lavender or light colour.
Definitely looks grey.
It looks grey, so it's hard to tell. But I think a lot of people really like that they're not making that nod back. And when it was first shown, the fans actually thought she looked a bit like Mork from Mork and Mindy.
Yeah.
So it's not Nanu Nanu, it's Nanhu.
Oh, very good. And of course, one of the big questions that people have been asking is how is Jodie going to sound as the Doctor? Doctors in the past, some have had their actual accent and others haven't. Jodie's a Yorkshire lass, so do we think we're going to have a Yorkshire Doctor?
I think it would be great too, and the fans really want it. Some of them who've written into us, Daniel Hughes on Facebook says, if Sylvester McCoy and Peter Capaldi can keep their Scottish accents, I'm sure Gallifrey has a Scotland somewhere, and Tom Baker, Paul McGann and Christopher Eccleston keep their northern accents. Why not? And another commenter, Tony Lewis, said he thought the way Jodie described seeing herself being announced as the next Doctor on TV in her natural accent was really lovely, warm and funny. And that's referring to a radio interview she did. The YouTube video is available online. And I had never actually heard Jodie Whittaker speak in a Yorkshire accent before. I only knew her as Beth from Broadchurch.
That might be true for a lot of people.
For a lot of people. And if you do go and find that video, it is absolutely brilliant. She just sounds great. It's her really natural, strong accent, and I think it would be lovely if they did keep it.
Yeah, I agree. I wonder if you don't know what the thinking behind it is, and whether they might go, well, we've made this really radical decision to cast a woman. Can we also go non-Southern at the same time? But no, I think it'd be really good. Like you say, it works really well with Peter Capaldi. And it's just nice to have all the different people represented, isn't it? Again, so yeah.
So and finally on Doctor Who, what can we expect from? We've got the Christmas episode coming up. What can we expect from that? What do we know so far? The one thing we definitely know is that it's the first time we're going to see Jodie Whittaker as the Doctor, probably in the last few minutes. What else do we know about the episode, and what are fans excited about?
Well, we know that David Bradley is coming back to play his version of the first Doctor. So we have to explain this one, I think, for a lot of people. So in the BBC documentary An Adventure in Space and Time, which was about the making of Doctor Who, David Bradley came in to portray William Hartnell, who was portraying the first Doctor. Now, unfortunately, William Hartnell is no longer with us and can't obviously play the first Doctor again. So Stephen Moffat and co have got David Bradley to play William Hartnell's character. So David Bradley is playing the first Doctor and meeting Peter Capaldi's 12th Doctor in the Christmas special. And that is actually the thing that most fans are really excited about. We asked them what they were most looking forward to. And out of the 12,000 people who voted, that's the top. We've seen a sneak peek of it on Children in Need. And we know that they're going to clash a bit. I think they're going to have some differing opinions. Yeah. And
I think there's an element of, despite the fact that he's even 400 years old then and he's from Gallifrey, there's still he's still got some certain 60s kind of Earth sensibilities and kind of attitudes to maybe what women's place should be and so on, which I think him and the 12th Doctor will clash on. So they're going to play around with the 60s versus 21st century thing, I think.
And I think that's quite important because at the end of the last series, when Peter Capaldi's doctor was asked, does this mean women are the future or something like that? He said, well, we can only hope. And a lot of people think that was a hint that Jodie Whittaker was going to come in and play the first Doctor. We know as well that Mark Gatiss will be back in a new role as what looks like a kind of military officer. It'll be set during the First World War. And a lot of people are wondering if maybe he's going to be a version of the real life character who actually created the blue police box. And maybe this will link back to the kind of genesis of the Doctor and the TARDIS.
And then the other setting is the setting of the first Doctor adventure, isn't it? The 10th planet. And that's where we think the first Doctor and 12th Doctor, when we saw them at the end of the last episode, meeting on that sort of snowy expanse, that's at the South Pole where that the Cybermen were first introduced, and that's that episode, and it's kind of him in some downtime between what was going on then. Potentially William Hartnell was actually quite ill during that episode, and he sort of sat a lot of it out, so there is a opportunity to sort of fill in those blanks potentially in that episode.
It sounds like there's lots of clues probably to come, but we're going to have to wait till Christmas Day to find out what happens and what Jodie Whittaker is like, even if just for a few seconds on screen. So lots to look forward to in Doctor Who.
Indeed.
In 2002, 8 celebrities were flown to Australia to be broadcast live on ITV, sitting around a campfire arguing, eating kangaroo testes and being mocked by Ant and Dec. Tony Blackburn was crowned the King of the Jungle in front of an audience of around 10 million people, and an unlikely hit format was born. 15 years later, I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here remains one of the most enduring formats on British television, still drawing in around 10 million viewers a night to watch, well, exactly the same thing as they did in 2002. The 2017 campmates include the usual mix of ex-sportsmen, soap stars, politicians and reality wannabes. I'm now joined by Paul Jones and Sarah Doran again to talk about the show. What is it that makes I'm a Celebrity so popular? Why 15 years on are we still the same amount of people still watching it?
I think you mentioned one of the things there, which is that they found this winning formula and they haven't really changed it. It worked, and so many reality shows fiddle about, change the personnel, change the format, and it all goes wrong. But actually, that people love the way this works, and they've not needed to change any of it, and that includes obviously hosts Ant and Dec, who are a class act and continue to be not on a lot of shows do you look forward to the kind of linking bits in between, but you do with Ant and Dec because
it's what
they're
makes
funny.
It, it's what makes the show.
And I think, like you say, with the format as well, we see a lot of reality shows. We see celebrities thrown into every kind of scenario. You've got your celebrity Big Brothers, your celebrity hair salons, your celebrity whatever. I think it's that in this jungle, they don't really have anybody but each other, and such unlikely friendships are formed. You see people teaming up. You see romance blossom, like Katie and Peter back in the day. Who'd have seen that coming? It's like a breeding ground for, not a breeding ground, I should say. Well,
we had our first I'm a Celebrity baby.
Yeah, Peter and Katie.
Did they actually?
Not in the jungle.
Not sure.
I wasn't talking about literal. But it creates so many wonderful friendships. It facilitates ridiculous scenarios you never expect to see people in. I think this series is kind of similar, like the number of people who were just in love with the fact that Amir Khan was so scared of Bush Tucker trials. It throws
when are you
going to
get to see a world champion boxer shrieking like a little girl because he's just touched a snake?
Almost never. I guess it depends what circles you mix in, but yeah, almost never.
Not the actual footage of it.
Do you think there's something also about it's a bit of sunshine in the winter, the kind of Death in Paradise effect? It's getting cold, it's getting dark in the evening, and it's 3 weeks where we can just kick back and people are kind of going through hell, but it's normally quite sunny. It's a beautiful location.
It's like why we love Aussie soaps. We love our Home and Aways and our Neighbours, because it's like this beautiful world that's away from us. And then there's something quite joyous about you're heading down to the jungle. They're just waking up. We're getting ready for bed, but Ant and Dec are just up for a brand new day. You see the clock. It's 7 a.m. It's a bit like breakfast TV in the evening.
Yeah.
With two very funny hosts. So it's like, now for my Piers and Susanna and to Derek are like the professionals at this stage. They've honed their craft on SMTV back in the day, and they bring the kind of joy of that zany breakfast TV show into an evening show and a reality show.
And actually, in the morning, that stuff really grates on me.
Yeah.
It's much better in the evening. I can handle it a lot better in the evening. So I think that's a really good point.
Because you've had a drink, maybe. You know. Possible, yeah. Although, you know,
maybe it's not like I've never had a drink for breakfast.
Indeed. I mean, do you think anyone else could do it? Ant and Dec, you know, I mean, obviously this year Ant had his problems, and you know, there was talk at one stage about, well, you know, will he be able to do it? And you know, could anyone else have stepped into the breach? Could anyone else present it except those two?
I think Holly Willoughby could have made a fair stab at it. I don't think it would have been the exact same, though. I don't think it would have had the magic. I mean, there's something about Ant and Dec. When Ant and Dec front a show, it's not just the show, it's as much about them. And they make it their own, they put their stamp on it. They are very much kind of the heart of what makes the show brilliant. Like Paul mentioned, you know, how often do you look forward to the links between
exactly
the things? So I think in a way, I would say no, probably no one else could do it. I think a lot of people could make a good attempt at it, but not quite.
It wouldn't be the same, would it? And it's like, it's their friendship. You can't, you know, that's however many years, decades old. That's what comes across. I didn't do that on purpose, but what was I saying? No, that's your fault. You threw a pun in,
and
it's
saying their friendship.
And it really comes across on screen, and it's kind of, you know, you can't just put two people together and expect to get that elsewhere. You're talking about Holly Willoughby. That was one of the jokes they made. I thought the way that they tackled Ant's stint away in rehab was really showed another side of why they're such a class act.
They tackled it head on, didn't they?
They did.
They made a joke of it, and there was all these rumours that he wasn't going to be there, and then they talked about it on air on a live show with millions of people watching.
Yeah, what have you been doing all summer?
What I will say about that was I hadn't watched the show from the beginning that night, so when I tuned in, I only got the "What have you been doing since the start of the summer?" and Ant like practically spit into his cup, and I was like on Twitter going, "Oh my god, did Dec just burn Ant?" And I scrolled back, I was like, "Oh, this has been like properly addressed," and it really was kind of a joy to see them like. To saying to somebody, you know what, you've had a tough time. There's no shame in that. We all go through our tough times, and we're not going to let this, you know, ruin your career. And that's really good.
It's
really
a great
good message to send.
It's a great message to send out, and you know, and I think, as you say, it really shows what a solid class act they are. The fact they can go through problems and come out the other side, and in a sense, be even stronger. So this series. We've already had a dropout. It seems to be becoming more regular, the dropping out at the beginning of the series. I think it's have one almost every year now.
There's always some issue,
There's a constant meme that goes around of Gemma Collins from Towie, who dropped out quite early on back in the day.
And we had the guy from Made in Chelsea, didn't he?
Spencer.
Yeah,
there was
he had to leave for certain personal circumstances.
I'm not going to say exactly what I think that was, because in case I'm wrong.
Yeah.
But we've had a relatively regular process. But this year, we've had someone drop out very early on, a YouTube sensation.
Jack Maynard, his agent and ITV, I think, made the joint decision to take him out from the jungle, and he agreed that they'd made the right decision. Don't want to go into it too much because there's a lot around there.
Basically someone had dug up some old tweets in which he used, you know, completely unacceptable language about people. Some people say it's banter and so on, but you know, you can't expect to be a role model on TV and have that stuff in the public domain. You know, you can't excuse that. On the other hand, I kind of I don't know how much of a fan I am of this sort of trend for going around trying to find things on people. You know, trying to dig this stuff up. He was 16 when he said some of that stuff. I think a lot of people probably wouldn't want to be judged on some of the things they've said and done at the age of 16.
Modern society, isn't it? Yeah. Kind of teenagers live their lives in public, and there's a public record of everything they've done and said now because of social media. Whereas, you know, when I was a teenager, you know, none of that exists. Yeah. Thankfully, none of that exists. There's not even any photos. It's
kind of like that old thing that your parents might say, you know, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. A teacher of mine in secondary school said to me, if you don't have anything nice to say, whatever you do, don't write it down somewhere where everybody can see it. Yeah. And that's kind of a lesson to learn from it.
Probably a lesson to learn going on. But, I mean, who's left? And who do you think are the standout stars at the moment of the show? We're in several days in. You're starting to get a feel for who's who in the camp.
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone's loving Stanley Johnson, aren't they? Kind of slightly because, they weren't because he's not. It doesn't appear to be Boris Johnson, but older.
Yeah.
And that's a pleasant surprise.
He does look quite a lot like him.
He does, yes.
They
are related.
Yeah, apparently. Sorry.
But so he seems, like a real gentleman at the moment so far, and I think also it was quite nice last night on the latest episode seeing him, instead of doing the camp gym that everybody else was doing, trying to get fit, he just went and found a flat area and laid down and went to sleep, which I have a lot of respect for. Also, I wasn't sure what we were going to get from Dennis Wise, because he's obviously got a reputation as being extremely outspoken. Sort of, in terms of football at least, potentially quite aggressive. And he so far seems to have been this kind of really nice guy who's been very supportive to other campmates, and who is just basically having a really good time being in there. So
and that's what's nice about the show as well, isn't it? It's not cynical. The cynicism comes from Ant and Dec. They're making fun of the whole format for you, and but the format itself is not cynical. They're not trying to deliberately divide them. In fact, if anything, they're trying to unite them, because if they work together, they get more food and everything's good. And you do see these sides of people that you're not expecting, the kind of Shaun Ryder type characters who've been in it, who suddenly become the sort of dad of the camp, and you expect them to be completely the opposite. Has anyone stood out for you, Sarah, so far?
I think more than the camaraderie, the thing that stood out for me is the sheer panic on Amir Khan's face when he has to do anything in Bush Tucker trial. I also love Toff from Made in Chelsea, Georgia Toffolo. I mean, for me, she's kind of like another Scarlett, like from last year, quite early on, being quite endearing. I loved as well one of the first nights when they were quite short on meal tokens. She was not backward in coming forward and saying, do you know what, I'm hungry, I really want one. and I mean, she wasn't saying it in a malicious way. She wasn't saying, I think I deserve one. She was just saying, guys, look, I want to eat. And I liked that honesty and that kind of feeling, because I think very rarely, actually, on I'm A Celeb have we seen quite, catty groups form. It has happened a couple of times, and we've seen it over the years, and I won't get into it because there's been lots of headlines and lots of things. But it's quite nice to see that first night, the four girls, it was Vanessa, the girl who plays Fizz, Jenny McAlpine, Rebecca Vardy and Georgia, just sitting down and going, we have a really nice first girls' night with a bit of dinner in the camp. And I like seeing that. I like seeing women working together rather than being portrayed as, her versus her. Because you get enough of that on TV.
So who do you think is going to win?
If I had to put money on someone now, it would be Toff.
I think so too.
Really? That's two bets.
But I don't know if she's going to have peaked too soon, because while Scarlett had that universal appeal from the kind of Gogglebox thing anyway, then she was a bit of a northern lass, eventually Ant and Dec, after the show, took her under their wing. I wonder, is Toff a little bit too Made in Chelsea to appeal to the mass audience?
It's certainly possible, but at this early stage, given how little we know about everyone, she's the one that stood out for me. I think Stanley could be a runner-up sort of thing if he's got the stamina. But I think
how long do you think it can go on? I mean, people always say this about reality shows. X Factor and Strictly are cases in point. People say that they can't just keep going on forever. But here we are. The X Factor and Strictly have been on for well over a decade. This has been on for 15, 16 years. And you think, well, are they ever? Will it ever be cancelled? Will it be cancelled?
Does it have to have Ant and Dec? Is one question. They're 42 at the moment.
No reason why
another 50 years. They could
for another 30, 40 years
when they're 57. Maybe we'll be doing this podcast.
Who knows? Well, not this particular one, hopefully.
I think as well, though,
it's going on though.
Yeah.
People complain about the lineups and they go, "Oh, they're not celebrities. You've run out of celebrities. You've got, they're not high enough on the list." But out of these random groups of people, you get amazing entertainment. And
also the nature of celebrity is more created all the time, right? It's not like there is just a finite group of celebrities who, once you've done them all, you're finished. Yeah. I mean, people on Made in Chelsea, weren't celebrities 2 years ago.
YouTube stars weren't celebrities 10 years ago.
So I guess, are we saying that we expect to see it for another 15 years?
I think as long as Ant and Dec want to do it, it'll keep going.
As long as there is television.
Yeah, and I mean, even then, if it's still successful, they'll try it at least to do it with other people, won't they? You don't know. 30 years of exactly the same format. Will people ever get bored? It worked for Blue Peter. It's worked for the Sky at Night. Why not? Well,
let's see. We'll see you in 15 years to find out. What is the most watched show on television so far this year? Strictly Come Dancing, An England football match? A big charity concert? No, it is of course the magnificent and awe-inspiring Blue Planet 2, the latest landmark documentary from Sir David Attenborough, the undisputed king of natural history and without a doubt the most consistently popular programme maker ever to have graced our airwaves. From Zoo Quest to Wildlife on One, Life on Earth and the Private Life of Plants, to Life, Planet Earth and Frozen Planet, the list of incredible shows that Attenborough has educated, entertained and informed the world with could go on all day. But what makes the 91-year-old show so popular? And why is the nation gripped by Blue Planet 2? I'm now joined by James Gill and Susanna Lazarus, who are going to discuss just that. Susanna, what is it that makes an Attenborough documentary stand out?
I think it's his ability to tell stories. You have endless nature documentaries on TV, but no one can kind of spin a yarn quite like Attenborough. I think he's just at the top of his game, and he's coming into it off the back of a lifetime of broadcasting.
You know what the trick is, don't you? It's that he's a naturalist, a very, very well respected naturalist, but he's also a great TV producer. He's been a director, he's been a producer, he's been a controller, he's been a presenter. He
knows every end of the television process.
He knows exactly what he wants to tell you that's really exciting in the natural world, but he also knows that you have to tell it properly, and you have to tell it like it's a TV story, and there's no shame in that, and it makes for some of the most awe-inspiring stuff that we've seen on TV. We're so lucky to have him in Britain.
And it is incredible that, at a time when people are talking about a move away from appointment of view TV, it's all about on demand, it's all about watching now. Still you're getting 14 million people sitting on their sofas on a Sunday night to watch a show made by a 91-year-old man. There's something that seems a bit strange about that. With all of modernity and all the technology, it's the subject matter as well, isn't it? It's there is nothing more fascinating than the world.
Well, if you think about it, we live in a world where, thanks to the internet, we see pretty much every corner. You can go on Twitter, you can go on Google, television shows you all sorts of things you haven't seen before. But something about this, when you're journeying into the depths of the ocean and you are showing us a glimpse of a fish with a transparent head and neon-coloured organs inside it, that's something that you can't even really conceive of, let alone see before. And I think that's part of why people are flooding into this programme, because it's that yearning, we're after something that will excite us because there is so much on offer. It's something that stands out.
The reason why people want to watch it together and at the same time, it's the lecture that you don't want to miss. I know that sounds really po-faced in a way, but it's not. It's kind of like the thing that everybody wants to learn at the same time and then talk about at the same time and think, oh my God, I just learned that, I don't know, bottlenose dolphins will team up with whales. Yeah. And it's just like everybody just comes in to the office the next day with us. It's like we all want to tell the story first, and it's all like, well, no, I watched it as well, I know, but it's just that sense of excitement about finding something new that you didn't know about before. And
it's a snowball effect, because like you said, if say you came in on a Monday morning and you're talking about Blue Planet and I couldn't and everyone else was, then I would join in the next week, and so the more people talk about it, the more people are going to want to be in on the party.
You get FOMO, don't you?
I always get FOMO.
Kids would say FOMO. Yeah, I'm familiar. And of course, there's messaging behind it as well, isn't there? There's particularly in modern series that Attenborough's made, there's been a quite strong environmental message, which it has got to be a good thing, right? Especially these are global hits, these shows, and they travel across the world. And there was a story recently about how many people in China had seen the latest series and how that perhaps was changing attitudes towards environmental issues in countries.
I believe so many people watched it in China that it slowed down the internet, apparently. I think at the BBC, they're broadcasting to us, but they are also in a position where they have a voice of influence around the world. And they are all environmentalists, and they take it very seriously. And particularly with Attenborough, this is his chance, really. He's in a rare position where he can get that message out there to millions upon millions of people. If you believe in that as a cause, why wouldn't you do that?
It's his legacy, isn't it? I mean, we've interviewed him a number of times for Radio Times, and he's 91 now. He's he understands very keenly, I think, that this is the planet that he's leaving to the next generation. And whilst he has been very quietly, very carefully, very conscientiously telling us about these sort of things throughout his career. It's becoming more important now. He's got to say it loudly, and he has a genuine. Maybe it's not a fear, but there's a sense there that he's acutely aware that he will be leaving this wonderful place to a generation, and it might not look the same. It might look very different.
And I guess in some ways that's another appeal of these shows, right? Because it's not just entertainment, is it? It's education and information. The traditional, very old school Reithian principles of the BBC. It's covering all those bases. It's fascinating, but it's also informative and educational and campaigning in a way.
And it has an impact. I mean, there's been several really stark images this series of plastic and the effect that plastic can have. And I was having a conversation with my friend just last night where we already recycle, but it's very much at the forefront of our minds at the moment, having seen sea life tangled up in plastic and seeing that poor the sperm whale, I think it was the baby whale that they believe was poisoned in the last episode. Like, these images have an impact, and it's, I guess, exciting perhaps to see the impact that could have on people my age who maybe, some of them recycle, some of them don't. If this could get more people to do so, then that's a great thing.
I mean, it's so hard to tell, whether series like this will have a concrete effect. You're dealing with so many variables, and as you say, this is a global show, but it's a global situation and a global problem.
It can't hurt though, can it? It can't hurt having the biggest show on TV having a message about something important.
No, the only danger is that if you keep watching it and you see it as an entertainment, as something that is sort of over there, very strange, very, very wild and completely incredible, but then you don't consider that your connection to it, I suppose. And there's a danger then where you have these beautiful HD photos and ultra high definition and all the rest of it, that it sort of stops to speak to you. It looks like a commercial or something like that. It's not. It's work that's sort of been there for 4 years. They've been working for 4 years and longer for this sort of thing. That's the only hesitation that I have around it, I think.
But I do think what they do in this show is they tell stories, and by telling stories, you're humanising something. You could look at it and think that is a photo and think, oh, that's a whale in the sea. But when you see that whale with its dead baby, that's a really it just gets you, doesn't it? It's a very emotive storyline. I think what the show is doing is perhaps using some of those storylines to put across their environmental message. Yeah,
it's like it comes back to what we said at the beginning. Like, Attenborough is a great naturalist, but a great TV producer and director.
And on that note, a bit before we end, what's been your favourite moment from the series so far?
Okay, I'm going to give you two.
Well, that's cheating.
It's sort of cheating. I'm going to ignore you and give you two. Obviously, the Bobbit worm was standout in that it was the stuff of nightmares. The worm with the kind of dagger-sharp claws lurking beneath the sand, striking out at unsuspecting prey. There's something just still makes me shiver thinking about it. But actually, okay, if I was picking just one, I would go with the Mobula rays, I think they're called. It was the scene in the very first episode where you had these rays in the sea at night, and they were moving. The sea was bioluminescent, and so it was kind of like a ballet of lights under the surface, and it was just so poetic and so beautiful. I loved it.
James, do you have a standout moment?
Well, because I know that you really like those little end bits, the behind the scenes and stuff like that.
I'm a big fan.
Do you remember? I'm pretty sure it was in the episode, or maybe it was a sort of an extra that they had online where they were showing the submarine going down to the whale carcass, and you had the sharks circling the carcass, but then they actually sort of looked towards the submarine and be like, oh, I wonder what that's doing there. And then, as you say, it sort of becomes this, for about 5 minutes, becomes this sort of terrifying, horror film where you've got...
Go back to Jaws, don't you? I know what they can do.
It underlines how difficult stuff like this is to make. It underlines how incredible all the people are, because Attenborough's not sat in the submarine going down. Let's not forget, he has the Natural History Unit has a whole army of adventurers and camera operators and all the rest of it. And I just think that spirit of adventure was quite exciting.
Indeed it is. And there's plenty more Blue Planet 2 to come. Thank you very much for joining us for the Radio Times podcast, and we'll be back with you again very soon.